People across the country and here in Connecticut support paid family leave. This would give employees paid time off to take care of themselves or a relative. But how much time off and how much pay? And can lawmakers agree on a plan? Those with disabilities and addiction are worried that a lack of funding could hurt services they depend on. And bridging the gap with the Muslim community. Today, a candid conversation about working together to fight racism and bigotry. All this Sunday, April 14th, 2019, on Face the State.
From Eyewitness News, Connecticut's most watched local political program, this is Face the State.
Good morning. On this Sunday, I'm Susan Raff, and welcome to Face the State. Democrats say voters were very clear in last November's election that people want better working conditions and that paid family leave is part of that. Joining us on Face the State this morning, Catherine Bailey is the Deputy Director from the Connecticut Women's Education and Legal Fund, and Eric Gjiede from the Connecticut Business and Industry Association. Thank you for joining us on Face the State. Catherine, take us through why this is important. What's wrong now, and how will this help Connecticut's workers?
Well, Susan, right now, Connecticut workers are going into financial despair without paid family and medical leave. So when someone is diagnosed with cancer, or their elderly relative has a stroke, or they welcome a new child into their lives, there's no support there. And what's happening is they are going into debt, they're losing their homes, they're losing their jobs, all because the United States is far behind other countries in terms of paid family and medical leave.
Would you say most companies offer it, or that would not be the case, that many companies do not? In
Connecticut, it varies. Some of the large companies are able to provide it, but a lot of the small ones are not. And they want to be able to provide this benefit because they know it helps them to compete with bigger businesses, retain talent, and to take the burden off of their shoulders.
Under the current proposal before the legislature, what would it entail? How much time could someone take off, and what kind of pay would they get while they were out?
Sure. Well, I wanted to mention, we found out a couple of weeks ago that more than 88% of Connecticut voters support paid leave, so there's huge support in the state. And I don't know that you could find another hot topic at the legislature with that much support this session. And there's a lot of support among leadership and the governor as well. So the policy on the table would be, as you said, up to 12 weeks, depending on the issue. It would help individuals get back to their original job with job protection. It operates much like insurance. So it's self-funded by employees and with sort of a risk pool format.
Right, everybody puts in.
Exactly, with the idea that when if you need to draw from it in your lifetime, which most people will at least once, then it's there for you.
Would it be 100% of your pay?
One of the bills that passed through committee would be 100% of your pay up to a cap of $1,000 a week.
And you could use it every year, once a year?
Correct.
Okay. Eric, I know that the Connecticut Business and Industry Association supports paid leave in some form, but do you feel that, from a business perspective, that this is a little bit over the top, and that other states have similar programs but not quite as generous?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. There's no question that this is a wonderful benefit if businesses can afford to do it, and it's something that when businesses come to us and say, can we, should we say if you can afford to, absolutely. The problem is this has a significant impact, particularly on small businesses, and it is one more payroll tax on employees in a time when people are already complaining that this state is far too expensive to live in and far too expensive to work in. So on the small businesses, we routinely talk to our membership about this, and in fact, I was at a Chamber of Commerce event just this morning. This was their #1 concern about this. They're talking, there was in some of our surveys, we had a 129 member manufacturing company say, if this goes into effect, this would have absolutely devastating. We would have to leave the state because we simply cannot afford to have our people out. We had an 8-member company say that, there is absolutely no redundancy in our employees' job duties. So if one person's out for a significant period of time like this, we simply couldn't incur the cost of training someone new
But
temporarily.
the cost would not be on the employer, all the employees put in, so that employer could hire a temporary person in the meantime, right?
That's partially true. That's partially true. So employers would have to continue to provide very expensive non-wage benefits to any individual out of the workplace for a significant period of time. They would also continue to have to incur the cost of administering this, and it's also this program is simply unsustainable, and you mentioned that a minute ago. You know, compared to other states, this is a far more generous benefit. And if you look what's being proposed here, the proponents say that this is only going to require 1/2% of employee pay to be taken from employees.
Doesn't sound like a lot.
It doesn't sound like a lot, and that's a big part of the problem. Is that at 1/2%, you take an individual making $52,000 a year, they're going to be paying into this program $260, but they'll be eligible to take out of the program $12,000 every year. That means you need 48 people paying in for every one person paying in at that income level. And that's simply unsustainable, and we see that in other states with their programs. Rhode Island offers a far less generous benefit, yet their tax rate, what they take from employees to cover this, is more than double what is being proposed here. So I think that we are going to see that almost right away, this program, while well-intentioned, is going to be insolvent, and then they're going to look to employees to take more of their pay to fund this program, whether they need this program or not, and then they're going to look to businesses, and that's something we simply can't afford to do right now.
Catherine, do you think there's common ground here?
There are a few inaccuracies I'd like to address. That we are actually hearing from many small businesses that they want this. They can't compete with large businesses for it. And right now, the burden is fully on their shoulders. We've heard from a lot of small businesses who are wonderful people, and they're saying, we try to provide as best we can for our employees when they're out and when they need it. We might be able to do, 50% pay or keep up their salary for a couple of weeks. But guess what? That's all on our shoulders. So they love the idea of a program that employees pay into because it takes that burden off of them. They can put that salary to the side and then use it to pay for temporary replacement costs while that person is out. This is a problem that's happening right now. It's just that we're not addressing it adequately. And if we could talk about the solvency of the fund, there was an actuarial analysis conducted by economists that determined that the 1/2% weekly wage would in fact keep the fund solvent, not only now, but going into the future.
Wouldn't it depend, though, on how many employees that you had? I mean, if you only had a few employees, I have heard that you need close to 50 employees to kind of make this work. What about companies that are smaller?
Yeah, I think it's devastating for small employers, to have individuals who are out that significant period of time. And I think there's every incentive for people to take the maximum amount of time if you're going to be providing them with a 100% wage replacement rate. And that's exactly why no other state has offered that benefit. So I think that if this program is going to be sustainable and not going to become another long-term financial obligation that the state simply can't afford, that benefit needs to come down. And I think a number of other changes need to happen in order to get it in line with what other states are proposing.
I heard lawmakers also negotiating or talking about, not just how much compensation, but also like who is a relative. Is it your immediate family? Mm-hmm. So those things really have to be spelled out because it could get, quite messy if it's your entire family or a cousin. And I know that there are people who would say, well, I'm paying into something that I'm not, maybe never going to use, but chances are at some point. But it is like an insurance policy. You can pay into your car insurance and never have an accident, right? So,
right, exactly. But it's there for you when you need it. And this program, the policy that's on the table is already a compromise. This is not more robust than other states. In fact, Rhode Island has 26 weeks for medical leave, or 30 rather, and California has 52. And in 4 out of 6 of the other states, as well as in the District of Columbia, there's an employer contribution for this as well. So this is really a baseline policy, and it's very doable in Connecticut this year.
I want to thank you for joining us on Face the State. What I am hearing at the state capitol is that this is something that may pass, but it may not be the icing with the cake, that there might be some kind of compromise going on, because I think that lawmakers on both sides feel that this is important. So thank you very much for joining us on Face the State this morning.
Thank you, Susan.
This week, hundreds of people with disabilities, as well as those who are recovering from addictions, came to the state capitol urging lawmakers to restore funding from cuts in prior administrations. We'll have that when we come back. Plus, you can always watch us on WFSB, and you can also go to our webpage, WFSB.com, and on Twitter. And on YouTube. We'll be right back.